To talk about all of a sudden. And I don't know where all of this stuff came from. But first, before we get any further, let me just see King Kruk that you're already here. So welcome, as always. That's a fair point. What's a fair point? So you commented that before the stream even started. So maybe I'm thinking maybe you are watching Josh's stream. Now I saw that he was having his like an hour before I had mine, but I thought that he did his on Tuesdays, and so I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to talk with him. I'm typically doing it Wednesday evenings at about 5 p.m. So let me start off by always how I start off. What am I shooting on today? And the thing that you will notice, and I know right now, King Kruk, I think I'm only talking to you, but a lot of people watch this afterwards, so I'm talking to them too. The thing that you will notice right off is I have a different set right here. So this is actually the same room that I have always kind of been in, not always been in, but the same room that I've been in over the past year or two. I'm just pointed the other direction. So where the shot used to be, the camera is right now, and then that's the other direction. That's my editing desk over there and such. Maybe I'll do a studio tour at some point. So I'm still working out, some of the infrastructure, doing it like this. I think my audio level is probably pretty low right now, and there's nothing I can do about that right now. I am over Unity on my mixer here, and I just have to figure out how better to do it into the camera. So speaking of which, what am I shooting on today? Everybody always wants to know. I am on the Canon R5C, and I have the 50mm 1.2 RF on the R5C. I have been playing around with lighting a lot, and that's something that I'm going to talk about in the stream here. Not just the lighting that I've been playing around with, but some of the new lights coming out and such too. So right now my key light, I've got the Aputure Nova P300C. It's the like 1x2-ish panel. It's a strange size. Through its own softbox with a grid, and then for my fill right here is just a reflector, and I have an Aputure 60D kind of shooting over my head onto that reflector for this fill light on that side of my face. So using the Schoeps CMC1, small CMC 141, small diaphragm condenser into the Rodecaster Pro 2. And then from that into the Tascam
XLR unit on top of the R5C. So, and I'm looking into a teleprompter. My 14, I don't know how you say that, 14 teleprompter, so I can look kind of at the camera as I speak. So, see, just wanted to start the conversation. Sorry. Okay, well, you shouldn't be sorry for starting the conversation. Let's talk, man. I mean, since we're here hanging out. So a couple things that I wanted to talk about. Now, you probably saw the thumbnail, and that is the RE Sky Panel. So, okay, in fairness, okay, RE Sky Panels have never been attainable for a lot of, especially YouTube creators, just because there's so much money. And, they're the type of lighting that you'll see on big budget productions, and it's crazy how many they use on some of these too. Like 1917, I think there was a couple scenes where they had like 1,000 of these, like out. Like, I'm not even kidding. They're like 1,000 of them, or several hundred anyway, like for one shot out in the middle of a field or something like that. So but they're traditionally like between $5,000 and $30,000, depending on what type of sky panel you want to get. Now, the problem with that of late is you have things like the Nova right now, and the Nova is, I think it's cheaper now than it was when it came out, but it's around a couple grand, like with the case and everything like that, and it gets really bright. It's RGB. It's got DMX. It is it's a pro light through and through. I mean, it's built really, really well. It's a nice heavy fixture. The the build quality is just great on it. All the cabling is great on it, and it is less than half the cost of like the RE equivalent of a light like this would be. And going even further, okay, nowadays, like the Aputure Nova is expensive for what it is now. I mean, that's just the way these things are going. They're getting cheaper, they're getting more fully featured. Now, RE recently came out with their new sky panel, so we'll talk about that. But for instance, I may or may not make a review on these, but I recently picked up a couple of the Amaran matte lights, the RGB matte lights, the 2x2s, and comparing it directly to the Nova, which I already own, the Amaran units are certainly cheaper, not just in price, but also in build. I mean, there's a lot of things about the Amaran that you can tell why, because I think some of the feedback that Aputure was getting is, why are you making this under the Amaran brand? Because Amaran is typically seen as being a lesser brand to Aputure, and so kind of more targeted toward influencers and things like that because of that lower price point. And indeed, the Aputure, or the Amaran rather, 2x2 matte RGB mattes are only like $700 or $800, which for an RGB matte is unheard of. Just even a few years ago, these would cost several $1,000s for something like that, right? So, and so the feedback to Aputure was, why are you not putting this as the Aputure product? Because Aputure doesn't have any product like this. And Aputure's response to that was, well, we're making it branded as an Amaran product because it's not, quite as robust. It doesn't have this, doesn't have that. It's features that they were talking about, right? Even though I think it does have DMX, but it's just cheaper. When you feel the thing is cheaper, you feel the control box is cheaper. It has the most frustrating few things about it. So you can't, with the Amaran RGB panels, disconnect the lead from the panel, and that is okay sometimes, but sometimes it's like, the way you want to transport them, or the way you want to, fit them in with each other and around things, it's like it would be helpful to be able to modify that a little bit. The mounting system is absolutely awful on them. Now, it's different now than it first was. And so when I started looking at the Amaran panels It had kind of like a flexible, bendy frame on the back of it, and a lot of people were complaining that that frame was coming loose. Now it has more rigid and spring-loaded kind of arms that are on the back, and it's better. They actually redesigned that, and I don't think they told anybody about it. They were just out of stock for the longest time, and that's one of the things that people really complained about. And by the time I got mine, when they were in stock again, that all of a sudden is different, and it's better now. So, you know, to their credit, maybe they didn't admit that it was a fault or tell anybody they were redesigning it, but it looks like they have. My biggest gripe with the Amaran versus Aputure is the Amaran has a loud fan in the control box, and it's a loud fan that cannot be defeated. Whereas with the Aputure Nova, you can set the fan to behave in different ways. You know, only if it gets so hot, or only such intensity, or whatever, slow speed, high speed. The Amaran fan is just on all the time, and it's loud. I mean, that's why I don't have any. That's why I'm not using it today. I have two of them that I bought. I decided to keep them because RGB panels, especially mats. I mean, these things are like so light. You can tape it to a ceiling, and it'll hold up there, right? That's how light these light mats are by Amaran. So, and they put out a lot of light. So they're technically, I think, 200-watt panels, but it is a very robust 200-watt panel. It's really bright. It really is. Includes a great kit, great case, with a softbox with a grid. And so it's really a nice kit for the $700-800 or so that it is. The other thing that I like about the case is that it's not so tight that you have to put every single little included widget in it in the exact same spot for the thing to close. Because I have a lot of products that are kind of like that, you know, and I end up jettisoning a lot of cases anyway, and I use Pelican cases, or, you know, I had a van for a few years, so I just put it in the van somewhere, you know. But a lot of the cases, they're, you know, you gotta fit it so exactly that. So I like that about the Amaran cast. So let's see, King Croc. I asked on the sky panels, and I hear is meh as a response. I don't know what that means. I don't know a whole lot about them either yet. I know that Ari is kind of playing up the fact that they're stackable, and they have frames that you can put, you know, the various panels in. And again, I think that's because the way that larger productions tend to use them is in multiples. You know, I don't think the typical sky panel customer, and I think they're in a lot of broadcast studios too. But those, I think, mostly are using the light panels because they're a bit cheaper and they're just as good, really. You know, you do pay the RA tax, you know, on things that say RA on them. But I think they have identified that their core customer is typically using them in multiples. And so that's one of the things that they're doing is, you know, is putting them in multiples. I think also there's more, just from the little that I've seen about them, they're more modular in the type of diffusion that you can use and everything. And so, you know, it clips on and clips off and stuff. I don't know. I just, you know, for the things that I do, I'm all about like the Aputures and the Amarans and stuff like that. I don't, it doesn't have to get rained on. It, you know, there aren't going to be many explosions around it, you know, so I would assume that part of the RE cost is that it's robust to be on film sets in inclement type of conditions, and it will survive that. And that's just not a need that I have. So, yeah, so I don't know. Okay, first generation sky panels, 30C and 60C. I know. You see, and what's funny is like, but still more than the Novas. I know, and they've been like that for a few months too. You know, and so I was kind of wondering, and I wouldn't go so far as to say predicting, but kind of thinking like, oh, is there like something new coming? Because every time you see a sale like that on a current product. You know, a lot of times that means something new is in the works. So I've been seeing that too, and I was kind of tempted by that, you know, because it's like it's an RE panel, you know, it'll last forever, but it's still more than the Novas, and like for what the Nova's a beast. I mean, that's the thing that people have to understand about the Aputure Nova panels. It's like when you put a Nova panel up on a stand, it's like clunk, you know. I mean, they're really big, heavy panels, and I'm sure they'll take a beating. All right, so let's talk about some of the other stuff. We've talked about the Fuji medium format. There's so much to talk about all of a sudden, right? We have the Nikon 135 1.8. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, don't Sony and Canon both already have one of those? Because they're making a big deal out of it as like, oh man, this is mind-blowing. It's like, aren't there already 135 1.8s? Am I tripping? Like, is there 135 1.8s? I want to say there's a Canon RF version of this already. Let me see. Canon RF 135 1.8. Yeah, that's what I thought. RF 135 1.8, $2,099. And now I don't know what the new Nikon version is. And Nikon, you know what, let me switch gears for a second, because I want to address something that one of the comments that was made on a recent live stream, and I probably should pull up all of that so I can address this, because I've been bad and I haven't been getting back to comments lately on live streams. So let me, you know what, I'm going to do it on my phone so I don't mess up my stream here. But I wanted to switch gears away from Nikon, because this kind of makes me think about somebody who had said, he was talking about Panasonic, and he says, Panasonic, I think, is going to make a comeback. What they're coming back to, I don't really know, because I don't think Panasonic in the world of stills cameras, or the world of hybrid cameras or mirrorless cameras, has ever been a player. Panasonic just hasn't. You know, they've had strange little video cameras. They've had cinema, like, you know, real deal cinema cameras, and they've had ENG cameras and things like that. But they've never really been a player in the stills market. Now they are. Right, not from a market share perspective, but from a capability of their platforms perspective. And I think, you know, you can take a look at the GH5 is probably the one that kind of springboarded this, or was kind of like an appetizer for the Panasonic thing going forward. But the real leap was the S1H, right? All of a sudden, this is a camera that you have to take seriously. The S1H is, and if you've ever like used one or held one, it's a brick. I mean, it's like, it feels like a DSLR, right? But, and then, you know, now they've built on that, and they've got the S5 II and the, you know, and the S5 and all these other things. The L mount, you know, which is still pretty strange. You know, they're in bed with a few other companies on that. But when a commenter said, you know, I think Panasonic is going to come back this year, I don't know what they're going to come back to, but I kind of disagree. And the reason I disagree isn't because they make bad products, but it's because they make good products. And by that I mean, the S1H was a monster. And if they couldn't gain more market share at that time with a camera like that, or what else can they do? Okay, so let's say the S5 II or whichever one. I might have the naming nomenclature off. Their latest, greatest full frame open gate, whatever it is they're doing now. These cameras are all great. I mean, they're all great. They've got great exposure tools on board, and now the lens system is beginning to flesh out, and that could be part of why the S1H didn't get more market share. But I just don't think they are ever going to be a player in the market like Canon and Sony. I think Nikon is hanging on their heritage more than anything else. But if you take a look at the companies who market, I mean, Sony is the undisputed king of marketing, right? They put their camera in the hands of anybody who wants one and says, hey, go tell everybody how it is. And they sell a lot more cameras like that. But Canon is better than any of these other companies at it. When you take a look at like the influencer market, you take a look even at like commercial, projects and things and what people are speccing, it's usually Sony, and if it's not Sony, then it's Canon. So I was watching a creator recently that I like, Cranky Cameraman, and he has a pair of FX9s. He has an RE Amira. He has an FX3. He's got a lot of stuff, and he's like he's a DP for hire. DP / cinematography. I think he gets into a bit of cinematography himself too, for hire, and he does a lot of like higher end commercials and things like that. And I remember him saying, it's like all you see out there in the commercial world is Sony. Like Panasonic may have had some of that market share at some point with the NG cameras, with news crews and such. But, he says, look, when you go to any of these things that I shoot, you go to any events, you go to, corporate gigs and stuff, it's like you see FX9s is mostly what you see. FX9s, FX6s, FX3s, those are like the cameras you see. And you see like Sony ENG cameras. But you really don't see like a whole lot outside of Sony. And my buddy Josh and I, who I have to talk to about his live stream timing, we're talking about this recently. And it's like, why do you think that is? Why do you think it is that even amongst like the Canon Sony debate, right? And sorry, I'm like wandering all over the place here. And I see you, King Crack. I see you. I'm going to get to your comments here. Why even amongst like the Canon Sony debate or offerings, is Sony always so much more in the hands of all these, commercial media types and such? And the answer, I think, to that is they're just easier to use. They're easier to use. It's easier. If you take like a Sony FX6, it has such a First off, the log codec is better. The S-Log3 is better than C-Log3 and C-Log2. I mean, that's kind of debatable, but it doesn't matter because Canon doesn't put C-Log2 in anything, except like their top couple cameras, whereas Sony will put their most aggressive log curve, the S-Log3, in pretty much everything they got, whether it can handle it or not. But I appreciate that because that puts the responsibility on me, the person using the camera, to say, okay, I can either figure out how to use this log curve, this profile effectively, or it's going to fall apart if the camera sensor can't keep up with the dynamic range and and the curve or whatever, right? Or if the bit rate that the camera is recording in doesn't have flexibility in post, and Sony did that for a long time. Like when I was shooting back with like A7 IIIs and stuff like that, those are 8-bit bodies that had S-Log2 in it, and they really had no business having log curves in them. I mean, it was tough grading 8-bit Sony S-Log2, right? So nowadays, with the 10-bit and the sensors have a bit more dynamic range and everything, they can make use of these curves. Now, with the Canon sensors, they can too, most of them, but Canon has decided that, if it doesn't have this many stops of dynamic range, whatever that magic number to Canon is, that C-Log2 is spec'd for, then we're just not even going to put it in there. And, that I think is the wrong move, because whether it has however many stops of dynamic range or not, okay, when I interpret Canon footage as, see, like R5C that I'm shooting on right now is a good example of this, right? If I take the R5C and I shoot it in RAW, and then I interpret that RAW as C-Log 2, there is a difference between that and C-Log 3. And there is a difference in that the C-Log 2 has, whether it has more dynamic range or not, because the dynamic range may not be there to be able to use what C-Log 2 will give it, give you in the container. But the behavior of the highlights as they approach that white point, they roll off softer, right? And so whether it have more dynamic range, or it makes no difference in dynamic range whether you interpret it as C-Log 3 or C-Log 2, C-Log 2 for what I do does look better because it's softer up top. So why can't I just have that from the factory, right? Why do I have to shoot RAW and then do this and then interpret it as that and such? Why can't I just have that and Canon put that inboard the camera? And the answer is because the answer is twofold. It's because there's some arbitrary number that they are not going to equip the camera with if it does not pull the dynamic range for that log curve in their eyes, and they should know they're the manufacturer of the thing. And the second thing is what Canon does with all their cameras, and it's protect other cameras in the line, right? So if I have the R5C, and if the R5C had C-Log 2 capability in it, they're going to say, well, people are going to stop buying C70s, or people are going to say, and that's just what Canon does. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that. Oh, because of the Nikon lens. Canon and Sony have 135, but that's what I thought. So they both do, right? I looked up the Canon and I saw the 135 1.8, and it's like, I don't know, man. It's funny. And every time a lens like this drops, you've got all the people. Well, Nikon doesn't have that many people. There's only like 4 of them, right? But like, if a lens like this was Sony dropped, right? And let's say that Canon and Nikon already had one, there'd still be like 100 videos on YouTube about the new awesome Sony 135 1. Man, nobody's ever seen one of these before, And it's like, yeah, somebody has. Your competitors actually both are already building them. I wished you got a Z9 8 in your hands. I'd be very curious what you think of their RAW workflow versus Canon's and R3D. The Z8 and 9, they can shoot B-RAW, can't they? I think that's like one of those things where, but I think it might have to be external. And I like B-RAW. I do have Blackmagic experience. I had an OG Pocket 6K for a few years. Sold it just because I wasn't using it a lot. I wasn't using it a lot, and I had at that time bought a Komodo. I'd already had a Dragon, but I bought a Komodo, and it's like the Pocket 6K and the OG Komodo are more similar than they are different, but the Red with the R3D, it is a more flexible codec. If for no other reason than you don't have to make an ISO decision on the day. So with the Blackmagic, it's dual gain. But then the strange thing is when you're working with the B-RAW in post, you can only go up to, so like if you shot at ISO, I'm trying to remember how this, I'm probably going to mess this up because it's been a while since I've had one, but if you shot on the Pocket 6K at like ISO 400, in post, you could only modify your ISO even in the RAW engine up to 1,000. Is it 1,000? I think it's 1,000. Or if you shot at like ISO 1600, right, your floor then would be 1,000. So I think it's like right there around 1,000 where you have to make the decision. And see, and what's kind of problematic about that is that's kind of where a lot of us live anyway. It's right there around 1,000, So it's like if it was one of those things where it's like, okay, if it's like on either side of 500 or even 800, well, I'd probably shoot everything at 1,000 then, right? Or if it's up at 3200. It's like, oh, so well, okay, yeah, I can shoot everything below 3200. But it's right there at 1000. It's like that's just right in the wheelhouse, right, of where everybody of where everybody lives. Okay. NRAW shoots ProRes internal, no B-RAW. Why did I think it shot B-RAW? I thought Nikon shot B-RAW. What else? What shoots B-RAW? Like one of the Panasonics, maybe? So, all right, Josh, I got a bone to pick with you, man. Where are you? Here you are. So, are you always doing your live streams? Okay, so I had been doing mine the past couple times, I think, on Wednesday evenings because my kids go to a church thing on Wednesday evenings. And so it's a good time for me to like have the empty house. Now, I decided to do it Wednesday during the day right now because I don't have any work today. And they are at school and my wife is asleep. My wife is a night worker, so she sleeps during the day, and so this is a good time to do that. But my point is, I thought you were doing your stream, Josh, on Tuesdays, and I could be wrong. So, but I don't want to run into you again because I saw after I had like scheduled it, I saw yours that was like just an hour beforehand, and so I'm like, oh man, I don't, being that we talk about the same kind of stuff, and you are the much bigger channel, that means you're gonna trounce me. So we've already talked about my set change here. We've talked about the RE Sky panels, the new ones, the new Nikon lens. What else? Oh, so Simon, who is Josh's favorite creator, the ordinary filmmaker guy, he just can't get enough of him. Simon had a video this morning about the Canon RF35 1.2, i.e. the lens that we all have been just whining and griping about. And what's funny about this is Canon has even called that behavior out. So in one of the more recent, types of things, yes, and even those primes that y'all keep whining about, we're going to be having those at some point. So, but Simon apparently thinks he knows something now about the Canon RF 35 millimeter 1.2, and that it's imminent, and it will, in Simon's view, be announced in the next month or two here. And so, I started to think about that because I'm one of those people who whine. It's the RF system, Canon RF system has been around for 6 years now. When was the EOS R? 6 years, I think. And they came right out of the gate with the 28-70 f2, which is nuts. I think the 50 was right out of the gate, and I think the 85 was either right out of the gate or is pretty close behind too. The L series ones, I'm talking about the fast one, big fast ones. But for whatever reason, they never had, the wide angle primes. Now I think what that may have been is they had the 28-70 f2, and they just like, this will cover us for a while, because it is optically kind of like a collection of primes. That lens is. It is so big and so heavy, though, that, if you haven't held one, it's... So I had one for a time, and I usually just left it at home. It was doing this kind of stuff. It was doing the, the YouTube talking head stuff, because I didn't want to take it out and work with it, because it's massive. But it really is like a collection of primes. It is optically significant. But... okay, so maybe that was their stopgap, but it is strange that they don't have those fast wide primes, how many years on this is. And so I got to thinking about this, right? The 35 1.2. If I were to get a 35 1.2, what would I do with it? Because now Josh and I both, and I see you there, sorry, dude. Usually stream on Thursdays, but I'm heading out of town. Oh, okay, yeah. That's what I thought. I didn't think you were on Wednesdays. So Josh and I both have had the same because I bought it and I never used it, and then I sold it to him and he didn't use it and he sold it. 24 millimeter G Master for the Sony system, the 24 millimeter 1.4, and it is a lovely lens. I mean, it is just, it's small and light and sharp and fast and really well corrected. I mean, it's just a 24 GM is just a great lens. I never used it. I never used it because the 1635 GM has that 24 millimeter within that zoom range, and it is also a very good lens. I never used it. And so putting myself in that position, okay, what would a Canon RF35 1.2 do for me? I have the 15 to 35 2.8. I have a 24 to 105 f4. I've got the fast 50, the 1.250. Where does a 35 1.2 fit into that? Now, I think the answer is the lens isn't for me. Like, it's not like me, like specifically me, but me, what kind of shooter I am, me. And there are a lot of me's out there, right? Because I shoot commercially, I shoot mostly interiors, and I don't shoot a lot of, if really much at all, portraiture. This is a wedding lens. The 35 1.2 is a wedding lens. That's what it is. This thing is tailor-made to shoot large groups of people in low light. You know, that's kind of what that is, right? And so you'll see a lot of wedding photographers, and they'll have, you know, I know a real common setup of wedding photographers is a fast 35 and a fast 85, right? Or they'll do a 24 over here and a 50 over there. Or they'll, you know, typically go like 2 focal length increments apart, right? But they'll have 2 bodies. They'll have one of these and one of those. And so this is a wedding lens. And I think maybe to Canon's credit, why they've taken so long to develop this lens is because maybe that's not a huge part of Canon's clientele. You know, maybe they do have more clients like me using their products that are out shooting commercially with fast zooms and things like that. And I think the other part of that too is the zooms have gotten so much better than they were just even several years ago. You know, optically speaking, like the 15 to 35 RF is fantastic. You know, the 2870 f2 that we were talking about, it's just a brutally sharp lens, right? And so other than getting all the light in and being able to keep your ISO low and really, you know, dim situations, or being able to really just blow out your background with bokeh, there aren't as many real optical advantages anymore with going with a modern prime lens over a modern zoom lens. Yes, the prime lens is still going to be a little bit better corrected for aberrations and distortions and stuff. It is going to be a little bit sharper. I'm not saying that they are better, zooms are, than primes. What I'm saying is they're really close now, and a zoom is way, way more usable to more people in more situations. So I don't know if I would get the 35 1.2 or not. RF 24 105 f4L and 35 1.8 were also the early ones. That's right. Okay, yeah. I don't think many people like the 35 1.8. I've never even held one. I mean, it's cheap enough that maybe I can get it and play around with it, but I think the 35 1.8 is it's kind of like their 16. The Canon's RF 16 pancake lens, like everybody hates it. And I'm not really sure why, because I've never had one of those either. But I think the 35 1.8 is just like, it's like the nifty 50 of 35s. You know, it's kind of plasticky and just junky, and I don't know. Allegedly. You know, I don't know because I haven't had one. So, King Croc, any thoughts on the sales we will see on gear this holiday season? Canon seems to be running sales year-long, I think, is what you meant to say. Yeah, Canon does seem to be running sales year-long, you know, year-round. And I think that the B&H sale that both you and I, Josh, kind of reported on, that they had around their 50th anniversary shindig thing they did. was crazy deals, especially on Canon. And it's interesting that Canon seems to place product on discount to move product. Sony seems to give product away to influencers to move product. Who's got the better play? Because both cost money, right? Whether you're giving the product away or you're sponsoring everybody under the sun like Sony does, that costs you a pile of money. Or with Canon, you put everything on sale, that costs you a pile of money, you know? But you're going to move product either way. But it's interesting to see kind of the dichotomy of strategy there, right, between Canon and Sony. What's going to be on sale for the holidays? I don't know. I think it's right now. Look, here's the thing, man. Like, had we had this conversation like a few months ago, I'd probably have an answer like, oh, I think this, that, and this. But I think over the past month or two, we have such an influx of new products, and the influx of new products that we have are all by companies who are extraordinarily competitive with one or two other companies in whatever space or whatever product category that is. And I don't think we've seen everything from those competitors yet. You know, we haven't seen the Sony answer for the Canon whatever, or the Fuji answer for the Panasonic whatever, or whoever's going to answer this RE Sky panel, or maybe the Sky panel was an answer, right, to the Aputure Pro Light, you know, thing and all this. So, you know, that's what's interesting about it. Blackmagic, their new camera is, you know, I think it's exciting. It's not exactly what anybody wanted, but Blackmagic has a track record of doing that, you know. They say, hey, everybody wanted NDs in a Pocket 6K. We're like, awesome. It's not a plastic football, right? Oh no, it's plastic football. You know, everybody likes that. It's like, no, we don't, man. You know, and so then they were gonna make, oh man, I hope they make a full frame camera. Say, hey, we made a full frame camera. It's awesome. It's not a plastic football. Oh yeah, it's plastic football. You know, it's like I don't know why they keep doing it. You know, we wanted a box cam. Well, we really want a box camera. It's like, look, here's one that does 12K with a pinner little sensor, and it's like, no, nobody wanted 12K. You know, we want a big sensor with little resolution, not a little sensor with big resolution. You know, so Blackmagic has never done what people want. You know, but they keep on, almost it seems by accident, designing brilliant things. Right? So, yeah, I think I think Canon, gosh, this is hard to call. I think Canon needs to answer Sony. You know, it just seems like, not necessarily with the lenses, because they're doing pretty well with the lenses. Like, I'm not one of these people that's going to jump on the bandwagon. Oh, the third party, this and that. Like, you know what? Canon has a pretty complete, with the gaping hole that is the wide L series primes. But other than that, a pretty complete selection of lenses. People just don't want to pay for them. They don't want to pay for them. They're expensive first party lenses, and you know, but they're good. You know, they're good lenses. RE Sky panels was the answer to Vortex lights. I think it's just the answer. That's kind of where, you know, like I started off saying, and I bought a couple of these Amaran, you know, panels, and I've got the Nova, and it's, you know, and all of these products have been released since the Sky panels, and the thing that they're all have in common is they're a lot cheaper than Sky panels. Right, so, you know, RE and the provenance that comes with the RE name, and there certainly is that, is only going to get you so far in the face of all these competitors. It's like, dude, if I could buy 3 of these for one of those, 2 of them could break. You know, like, and I'd still be ahead, right, kind of thing. But yeah, I think the RE was what's the other? IntelliTech is the other one. IntelliTech's making some pretty cool stuff. So I don't know if you've seen them, but they've got big, dude. Like they've got like 3x6s and like 4x6s, RGB, I think, panels, and they're foldable, and they come with a frame. They're still super light, you know, because they're mats, right? So they're flexible mats. I should say not panels, but mats. And they come with the frame. They come with the softbox. Come with the grid, you know, and all that. I think on the first version of the IntelliTech lights, the main gripe from people was how loud the fan, and the fans are just like, fans are evil. And the thing is, with all these powerful lights, you know, I don't know how Aputure did it so well with the Nova panels, because the Novas are like really quiet. But like all the rest of these things, man, it's like they put these little fans in them, so they have to spin at super high RPM, you know, and it just bleeds into every single mic that has ever been created. Josh, Canon FX3, yeah, I think we've talked about that, haven't we? This is the Canon FX3. What would that look like? Well, they certainly don't have any shortage of low megapixel sensors. But would they go that low? You know, would they do like a full frame? Like, what is the FX3's sensor resolution? It's only like 10 megapixel or something like that. You know, they do that with the Cinecams. Like the C70, I think, is about that. But yeah, I don't know if they've ever done a full frame that's really low megapixel like that. So, but you know what? Here's the thing though, too, Josh. Like, I'm like, I think if it's going to be full frame, I'd rather have the oversampling, because really one of my biggest gripes on the A7S III sensor cameras, all of them, however many we're up to now, like 7 or 8, is the smeariness, and the noise, and you know, and the thing is, it's like, in order to get rid of any kind of noise, and most of them bake in noise reduction anyway, you don't have any more detail to really play with to be able to get rid of that noise. And when you do have noise on those sensors, it's big blotchy noise, and I can only imagine that's because the pixel density, you know, these are big pixels, and so they make big noise. So, but you know, by contrast with cameras like the R5C, for instance, you know, where it's got an 8K read and then it's downscaling that into 4K capture, even if it is noisy, it's downscaling that noise too. I think that's a better way to do that. I really do. And I think the trade-offs that you get for that, which is mostly like sensor scan speed, heat, you know, things like that, that type of tech is getting better all the time. So I don't know if I would like a Canon FX3. I mean, maybe functionally speaking, yes. You know, I would like Canon to have a camera that size with their most aggressive log curve in it. You know, to be able to work like the Sony like that. Third gen IntelliTech, look, oh, they're third gen. I thought they were second gen. Very curious about the fan noise. That's why I didn't get the Amarans. The Amarans are loud, like they really are. So it's funny too, because like it's such a mixed bag of people's opinions out there. You've got the folks that are like, oh, this isn't loud, I could do this all day, you know, and then you have people where it's like, it drives me crazy, you know, I don't want this thing on. It's pretty loud. Like right now I've got a fan in the laptop that's sitting right here in front of me, and you probably can't hear that unless I'm also speaking, because I have a gate on the board there. The Nova panel right here is dead silent. I mean, I don't think the fan, I think I have the fan, you know, the fan's only going to kick on low at like when it's 70% power or something, and it's, what is it, like maybe 10 like at most. So So it's like dead silent. But if this was one of these Amaram panels, I have to figure out how to relocate the box. Like, where am I going to relocate this box? Because it's going to be up here going, and it's like, that's just, no, that's not cool, man. You know? I ain't into that. The Intellitek ones do look interesting, though. R6C is the FX3. I don't know. Whatever happened? Weren't they going to do like an R7C? Whatever happened to that? You remember that? They didn't do it, did they? I don't think they did it. They were talking about an R7C. They were talking about like a crop sensor R5C kind of thing. Yeah, or the R6 is, lesser resolution. R6C. So the R5C is it's a crazy camera. I mean, everybody knows what the R5C is, but it very much feels like it used to be one of these, and now with some skunk works in, it's one of those. That's what it does not feel or behave like a holistically designed, homogeneous product. The capabilities are nuts. Capabilities are nuts. That's why I have a pair of them, and I am beyond happy with them. But it just feels like a Frankenstein still. Even after all these fantastic updates inside a lot of them, it feels like a Frankenstein. So I think if there were to be a Canon FX3, it needs to start life as a Canon FX3. It's not going to start life as an R5, and then, hey, we're going to put a cinema operating system on it, and no stabilization, and a RAW and a fan and all this stuff. It's like, you pretty much just like are building a new camera anyway. Why not just build a new one from the get-go? Small video focused camera that isn't a hybrid or photocentric camera. I would love 6K or oversample 4K internal recording or 6K RAW. I know we both love the oversampling, yeah. You know what? And I think we both love the 6K RAW too. I don't know if you work with RAW as often as I do, but 6K, native 6K is a real sweet spot too. I really like working with 6K. I don't think the world is ready for 8K. The world seems to be fighting that point. I mean, when you take a look at all the consumer electronics out these days, with all the audio video processors and all the TVs and things like that, it's like 8K. It's like, what are you gonna watch? I mean, there just isn't a lot of 8K content out there. There aren't a lot of studios creating 8K content, and so it's one of those things where the gear is starting to be there, but nobody has found out how to commercially deliver 8K in mass, right? And so, I mean, you've got what is cables are still at what, like 780i or like something like that, and they lobby to keep. This is something that I learned from Carlos. They lobby to keep that interlaced 760 or 80 or whatever that resolution is in place, and it's a bandwidth limitation, so it's like, yeah, it's like we're out there shooting 4K, we're out there shooting 8K on some of these cameras, and I mean, people are consuming the stuff I do on these devices, right, and the stuff you do too, they're consuming them on their phones. If they do consume them on a big display, a TV, they're still sitting 10 feet away from it. So what exactly right now is 8K worth? Because anybody who has worked with 8K, has worked with over 4K, knows that it's a bear to work with. It really is. You need a extraordinarily robust system. You need a lot of disk drive space. You need a internet connection with a fast up speed to be able to, especially if you're going to be collaborating with these files back and forth, and sharing projects and such. It's really tough to work with. 8K is in comparison to 4K. Now I know that some people have workflow is built out for 8K, but even then, I would say, hey, where are you going to show it on that? You know, what's your audience here? So I think I have got through the comments. I like to keep these to about an hour. I am at 56 minutes and 49 seconds. So thank you for the few of you who have joined me. Let me know what you think about the new. I'm still working out what I want to do, and like I said, it's the same room, but I wanted to make it a little bit lighter. I might, which way am I looking at? Back there, have maybe another light back there. That's a set of barn doors right there, and it's like the entryway to my house is on the other side of it, so I might like illuminate in there maybe. So yeah, just kind of playing with it. Tell me how the audio sounds right now. I think it's a very low level. Oh, Josh, by the way, I thought the Tascam unit was broken when I went to use it, and I took it off the shoe and I put it back on the shoe, and it came to life. So I'm like, oh, but I thought, it's like, oh man, so I've only had this thing for like a month and it's already broken. So that's what I would like to see next, is somebody else make a hot shoe unit for Canon's smart hot shoe than Tascam, because out of all the products that I have ever even seen online, that one seems to be, it's not if, it's when, right? With these tasks, it's a $500 digital preamp, and it will break at some point. It is shockingly unreliable. is what it seems like. And then when it does break, you call Tascam, they go, you know, I never heard of that. So anyway, thanks, King Croc. The audio sounds clean. I think the audio is probably low level. So, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it with gain staging through here and everything. Yeah, we'll see, and we'll see if it's synced up. For some reason, last stream it wasn't synced. So I'm kind of working on that bug too, trying to figure out what that is. Anyway, I'll see you guys. Peace.